Hello, my name is Jacob Monk, and this video is about a Frenchman. He was called Alexis de Tocqueville. And Alexis de Tocqueville, he traveled to USA in the 18th century. His purpose was to study how democracy was working in USA. And when he came home, he wrote a very famous book called Democracy in America. You can still get this book in translation to any language you want to read it in. And it's so interesting because Alexis de Tocqueville, he was absolutely right. It was just on the spot, his analysis of democracy in America. And now, 2017, more than 100 years later than this book was written, we can see the consequences of the American democracy. Is democracy a good idea? The answer that Alexis de Tocqueville came with was no. Democracy is a bad idea. Why? Well, the reason is that in a democracy, the majority will always try to repress the minority. The majority in USA, they were the white Protestants. And Alexis de Tocqueville, he could see that the white Protestant, they had made a society with black slaves coming from Africa. The slaves were heavily repressed. And still today, 2017, the black people, the descendants of the slaves in USA, they constitute the lower class in USA. Most of the criminals, most of the prisoners, most of the poor people, the unemployed are black people. So USA is still today a racist society, just as it was when slavery was upheld. But today, the racism, the unfair way of living in USA has not the reason of American laws. The reason is American economy and tradition. Because, you know, when your parents are poor, you're going to get poor too. And when your parents are rich, you're going to get rich too. That is why the descendants of the slaves were very poor. And their descendants, they were poor too. And the descendants of their descendants, they were poor too, of course. And I'm not talking about the few exceptions, because I know there are some famous actors in Hollywood, black actors, and they are quite rich. I'm talking about the majority. Well, let's change the subject a little bit, because I'm not going to say anything bad about USA. I'm going to say something bad about democracy as a concept. I'm living here in Copenhagen, Denmark. We have a democracy too. Here in Denmark, we have repressed minorities too. For example, I'm a Catholic. In Denmark, Catholics are repressed. We do not have the same rights as the Lutheran Protestants that constitute the majority here in small Denmark in Scandinavia. In our constitution it is written that all people in Denmark have to pay tax to the Lutheran Church. You don't have to be a member of the Lutheran Church. You just have to pay tax to the church. So even me as a Catholic, I'm paying tax to the Lutheran Church, to the Lutheran pastors, the Lutheran bishops, and the Lutheran buildings and the Lutheran schools. I do not want to do it because I'm a Catholic. And I suppose the Muslims in Denmark, and the Jews in Denmark, and the atheists in Denmark, and the Hindus in Denmark, all these people, they do not want to pay tax to the Lutheran Church, just as I don't want to pay tax to the Lutheran Church. But according to the Danish constitution, the majority of Danes have decided that all people have to pay to the Lutheran Church. That is an example of what Alexis de Tocqueville said in his book, that majority will be the way of misusing democracy, will be a way of misusing majority power. In America, the white constitute the majority. In Denmark, the Lutherans constitute the majority. And at the moment, I'm living here for a short time in Cyprus in the Mediterranean Sea. You know, the main city in Cyprus, it's called Nicaea. I hope I express it the right way. See on your map, Cypern, it is called in Danish, and Cyprus, it's called in English. I hope I'm expressing it the right way. Here in Cyprus, we have exactly the same problem, because in the old days, that is before 1976, Cyprus was a part of Greece. The majority here in Cyprus were Greece people. They were members of the Greece Orthodox Church, but there was a minority, maybe 20 or 30% of the population here on Cyprus. They were Turkish Muslims. And then came a new leader of the Greek. He was called Makarios, and he was a bishop in the Orthodox Church. And he said, I want to expel all Turks here from Cyprus, because I want it to be a 100% Christian, 100% Greek island. And that made the reason for a civil war. They had around 10 years of low-level civil war between the Greeks and the Turks. And in 1976, the Turkish army, they attacked Cyprus and made an invasion. So since then, Cyprus has been divided between the Greece part in the south and the Turkish part in the north. In the south, Christianity is the dominant religion. In the north, Islam is the dominant religion. And since 1976, there have been negotiations between the parties from the north and the south to find a solution, because everyone wants Cyprus to be united. But how can it be united when Turkey is not a member of the European Union, when there are different religions, when the Turks do not want to be dominated by the majority Greece? Well, until now, no one has been able to find a solution. So still today, the division was made 1976, and today it is around 40 years later, 2017, the island is still divided. They still have negotiations to find a solution how to unite the island, but it is impossible to find this solution. That is what I believe myself, and all the people I've talked to and listened to, they say the same. It is impossible to find a solution. Cyprus will continue to be a divided island between Turkish Muslims and Greece Christians. And that is a pity. The reason why Cyprus was divided was because the majority tried to dominate the minority. They tried to repress the minority, exactly like Alexis de Tocqueville said that democracy would be. Before 1976 there was a democracy here on Cyprus. Today there are two democracies, one in north and one in south. The conclusion of this short speech is that democracy is not always a good system, because democracy leads to repression. It leads to the majority of the population represent the minority of the population. If you had a monarchy or another system where an intelligent ruler could find a way to make it possible for everyone, for Muslims, for Christians, for everyone else, to live life their own way without repressing any other, then it would be the best. Why couldn't Turks and Greece people live together here in Cyprus like they did before 1976? That should be possible, because Islam and Christianity has been here for more than 500 years. People has been living together without any real great problems. So it is possible, but it is not possible if one part wants to repress the other. And that is how democracy works. And that is why democracy is not always the best system. Sometimes you need some other kind of structure. Maybe a dictator like they needed in Spain a long time ago. Maybe a military rulership. Maybe a king. You know, in Denmark we have a queen ruling. It is called a democracy here in Denmark, but as a matter of fact, it is a monarchy. That is what is stated in our constitution. And I think monarchy is in many cases a much better way of running a society than a so-called democracy. That was what Alexis de Tocqueville told us, and I believe that he was right. Thank you for listening.